Got a study of the Irish tax Mícheál O'Carroll, and I want to bring you to the first point of fraud, which was the 2nd and 3rd of September 1939, where they changed Article 28.3.3 of the Constitution and in the English text only, and put in an artificially extended meaning of the time of war. It was only enrolled in the English text, but they changed it in both texts, but I'll explain. So this is like how thick that book is, people. There's 790 odd pages in it, and it is, as you'll see here, it's a literal translation of that text there, okay, which is the Constitution, alright? The original written Constitution, which is enrolled, okay? So, we're going to 28.3.3, okay? And as you'll see, this is not what was written in the original format, because there's only that there. It says, nothing in this Constitution shall be invoked to invalidate any law enacted by the Oireachtas which is expressed to be for the purpose of securing public safety and prevention of the state or preservation of the state in a time of war or armed rebellion, or to nullify an act done purporting to be done in pursuance of any such law. That's the original 28.3.3, and that's Irish. That's right. So that's the written Constitution, okay, as enacted on the 1st of July and in operation upon Rocknahern, okay, right? That's it there, okay? That is the draft of that, which was adopted on the 1st of July, enacted by the people. So it was approved by Dáil Éireann on the 1st of July, 1937, okay? So as you'll be able to see here, they're both identical. In the English, top is the Constitution, bottom is draft. And in the Irish, okay, identical. Alright? And then we had the emergency of the Second World War. Okay? And that was this here. The First Amendment of the Constitution, second stage, where they said what they are doing is ultra vires. The powers that they seek would be ultra vires, so it would do no harm to remove the doubt. It's all there, people, so just read that and pause it. So, and they changed it in English only. And that was the First Amendment of the Constitution. And then they brought this out. This is the First and Second Amendment of the Constitution. This is the 1942 Constitution, 50 articles, where they changed the text. But they didn't even write it at the front of the book that they changed the text either. This text of the Constitution is a copy of the text, right? First Amendment 1939. First Amendment 1939. Look, see it? Yeah. And Second Amendment, where they says they were tidying up the articles, where they changed the text and they completely changed the articles in this here, right? So we've this counted, book counted, and there is 28,000 words or something in it, or something. I don't know what it states. Hang on. In there somewhere. I have it counted somewhere. We have the words that there counted. That there counted. And there's less words in 63 articles than what there is in the 50 articles. And Article 28.3 is where they done the artificially extended meaning of time of war and read it in standardised Irish, which it wasn't enrolled in the office of the registrars pursuant to the Irish Constitution in 2 languages. So that's the point of fraud. For it to be law, it needs the Irish tax shall prevail, you know. So here we are, okay? And that there is now the same as what's in this book, okay? And look at the length of that compared to, I'll get it now for you. Look at that 28.3.3 there in the Constitution, the bottom paragraph there. And then look at the length of this, what they changed it to. Okay? And it says, nothing in this Constitution shall be invoked to invalidate any law enacted by the Oireachtas which is expressed to be for the purpose of securing public safety and preservation of the state in a time of war or armed rebellion, or nullifying any act done purporting to be done in time of war or armed rebellion. In pursuance of any such law, in this subsection, time of war, this is the artificially extended part that they put in, okay, in 1939. Time of war includes a time when there's taking place an armed conflict in which the state is not a participant, but in respect of which each of the houses of the Oireachtas shall be resolved that arising out of such armed conflict a national emergency exists, affecting the vital interests of the state, and the time of armed rebellion includes such a time after the termination of any war or any such armed conflict as foresaid, or of an armed rebellion as may elapse until each of the houses of the Oireachtas shall have resolved that the national emergency occasioned by such war, armed conflict, or armed rebellion has ceased to exist. Now, we have been in a perpetual state of war since 1939, actually 1914, the beginning of the First World War, then the Second World War, you have it here, and then in 1976 this was about to end, and they brought in the Emergency Powers Act of 1976, and you've been in a perpetual state of war under Article 28.3.3 of the Irish Constitution, or the Constitution of Ireland, because that's what that is, the Constitution of Ireland. That's the Irish Constitution there. That's the Irish Constitution, the one which was enrolled in the office of the Registrar of the Supreme Court. This wasn't enrolled. It was only done in English. The First Amendment. You can visit our website and see that amendment. www.bunrock1937.ie. So this is all an artificially extended meaning. And look at the Irish, okay? So, for it to be law, it needs to be enrolled in that 28.3.3. Okay? That's the law. That's an artificially extended meaning of it. Okay? That's time of war. And they are manipulating us through an artificially extended meaning time of war to keep us in a perpetual state of war, which keeps us in emergency legislation, which means that they can rule with impunity, being a dictatorial state, and the government and the state take control. So this must end here. So we must go back to this here, which I'll read this out. First Amendment of the Constitution. Bill 1939, second stage. Question proposed that the bill now be read a second time. According this amendment required to resolve a doubt which has arisen as to whether under Article 28 of the Constitution a time of war means except one in which the state is actually participating as a belligerent. My view was that the time of war was defined in the Constitution covered an emergency of this sort, an emergency such as we are facing now. However, if we get from the Oireachtas the powers that are sought in the bills that we are now put before you, it would do no harm at any time the possibility of legal action being taken, so they've left themselves immune from legal action. Questioning the validity, so we weren't allowed to question any validity of any orders that may be issued, so we're not able to question this immigration pact or the hate speech law or anything like that, because they're doing it under emergency legislation, people. Okay? Questioning the validity of any orders issued on the grounds that the powers were contemplated at the time of the enactment of the Constitution, and therefore any act might be taken would be ultra vires. Well, that's a Latin term for illegal. And that the powers we seek would also be ultra vires. To remove that doubt, we want to include in the phrase time of war, time of when an armed conflict is taking place, and it might not menace or vital interests of the state. It has been suggested in the Dáil, and may be suggested in the Seanad, that the moment you leave it to a majority of both houses of the Oireachtas to determine a time of an emergency of this sort exists, you make it possible for the majority of both houses of the Oireachtas to suspend the Constitution. And that therefore there is nothing to prevent an unscrupulous party with a majority in both houses, the Greens, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, from coming together, right, and changing the Constitution even in accordance with law. So they're trying to do, they've deferred the unified patent referendum, which is surrendering of national sovereignty, Article 5 of the Constitution. Ireland is a sovereign, independent, democratic state. That means the courts are sovereign and independent, okay, with separation of powers, the legislative, the executive and the judicial, okay. So apart from normal times, it must be I think it must be recognised that in certain times of an emergency it is essential for the services of the state that the executive should be furnished with ample powers to face a contingency that might arise. I notice that there's an amendment has suggested which tries to further define the time of armed conflict, a time of when a member of the British Commonwealth of Nations would be engaged in war. I do not think, however, that it would cover a possibility of emergencies. One can visualise a case in which, let us say, Canada might be at war in the East, and that war might not in any way affect our vital interests. Neither would it be much help to suggest that because Great Britain, let us say, were at war defending her own interests in the East, such a war might not menace our vital interests. Even if Great Britain were engaged in a European war, which they are at the minute, with Ukraine and even in Israel in the East, that might not necessarily affect our vital interests, but one can visualise the circumstances in which a particular war, although it might not menace our vital territory, actually might affect our vital interests. Leo Varadkar put this country into a state of heightened emergency again on the 16th of March 2020, folks, and we have remained in this heightened tension of emergency, and they are using this here, which is not in the enrolled text, which is these here, right? You're only after seeing it, right? They're using this here to use perpetual war, a state of a heightened emergency in this country to legislate with impunity as a dictatorial state where the government take control. Okay? And that is it all there, folks. Alright? So, anybody want to argue that point? Because I'm up for it. Just doing a video there, right? Now, I did this a few years ago, and me and my mate counted every word in it, right? In every article. Okay? And that was the total. And I'm talking today about Article 28.3.3. Okay? And it's the 33rd doll. Just another point to consider here. Okay? Alright, back to these books again. The Constitution, the draft Constitution, and Micheál Ó Carúil's study of the Irish text. So Micheál Ó Carúil says that he was taking it from the original book. Okay? So, right? So we can see here 28.3.3, right? In English, 28.3.3 in the Clogilloch, right? Now I'll turn it over so you'll see that 28.4 starts, okay? So that's it there, right? Okay? Same in the draft, look. It's the exact same, right? As you have seen, look, there. That's the exact same in English, okay? And then we go here. Now, that's not what's, that is not enrolled in the office of the Registrar of the Supreme Court. So it's not, okay? That's not the original provision. That's the original provision. That's the draft of it, okay? Look at that, people. So they've given you the 1942 version and written it into the Clo, which it was never ever done in. Wow.